Most of us grew up learning that the American Constitution, our Constitution, guarantees birthright citizenship. In other words, anybody born in this country, even to parents who are here illegally or simply on vacation, is a U.S. citizen and due all the benefits of that for life. But is that really what the Constitution says? Michael Anton does not believe it says that. He's a lecturer at Hillsdale College and a former Trump advisor who just wrote a piece in the Washington Post arguing that birthright citizenship is not a constitutional requirement. Michael Anton joins us tonight. Michael, thanks a lot for coming on. I'm amazed the Post printed this piece. Good for them. You took a lot of heat for it. People were shocked by the idea that you would even question this. But you made your case partly on legal grounds. Why does the Constitution not say what we've been taught it says?
Well, you have to read the whole 14th Amendment. It says there's a clause in the middle that people ignore or they misinterpret, subject to the jurisdiction thereof meaning of the United States. What they're saying is if you're born on U.S. soil subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, meaning you're the child of citizens or the child of legal immigrants, then you are entitled to citizenship. If you're here illegally, if you owe allegiance to a foreign nation, if you're the citizen of a foreign country, that clause does not apply to you. If you read the debate about the ratification of the 14th Amendment, all the senators who are discussing what this is meant to do and what it means are very clear on this point. I tried to point that out. I expected the left would blow up and get angry, which they did. What I didn't expect, at least not to this extent, and what was very disappointing, was how angry the so-called conservative intellectuals got with me. And they essentially said any opposition to birthright citizenship is racist and evil and un-American. And I'm still in the middle of this debate, writing back and forth. It'll go on for a while. I'm happy to do it. I'm a happy warrior on these questions. But it shows you, you asked the speaker, why are the Republicans so bad on this question? He gave you some answers. I'd ask a parallel question. Why are the so-called conservatives, the intellectuals, the conservative scholars so bad on this question? That's one of the things I'm trying to point out.
The nonprofit people who've been consuming billions of donations for 40 years as the country gets more liberal, and then lecture people like you that you're sort of not towing their line? It's a deeply unimpressive group. Deeply unimpressive group. I would ignore them if I were you. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about the writers and the think tank scholars.
Oh, I'm very aware of exactly what you're talking about. But let me ask you this. So the people who wrote the 14th Amendment did not envision a moment where, I don't know, thousands of Chinese would fly to Saipan, have their children there so they could become U.S. citizens, or people would sneak in illegally into this country so their kids would get American benefits. That wasn't kind of a consideration for them.
The purpose of the 14th Amendment was to settle the question of the citizenship of freed black slaves. So this is right after the Civil War, and you have some people in the country citing the Dred Scott decision, widely regarded as the worst Supreme Court decision ever, which held that no black person could ever be a citizen. And the Congress said, we're going to overturn that forever and make it clear that if you were born here and you're subject to the jurisdiction, as all freed slaves were, then you are a citizen and no state can take that away from you. But they also make it clear in language in the debates and in the Civil Rights Act of 1866, passed the same year as this debate by the same Congress, that you have to be not subject to any foreign power in order to be eligible for birthright citizenship. And all the people attacking me and freaking out about this, they don't really have an answer to that. They just glide past it and try to obfuscate and point to other things that aren't relevant. If you read the debate, it's very clear what the framers of that amendment meant.
Well, because for them it's theology. It's not a policy debate, and you violated a tenet of their religion. And I hope you'll continue to do that fearlessly as you have. Michael, thank you.
Me.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. Enrique Acevedo is an anchor at Univision and interested in the topic of immigration. He joins us tonight. So, Enrique, I'm sure you heard that. It's a very interesting point, I thought, that Michael Anton made, that the 14th Amendment was never envisioned to give birthright citizenship to the children of people who are breaking our laws, just snuck in here illegally. But leaving the legal debate aside, why, as a matter of common sense, does the United States owe citizenship and all the benefits and privileges that come with it to the children of people who sneak in here in order to have their kids here? Why would we ever go along with that?
Well, first of all, I don't think they sneak in here to have their kids receive citizenship.
Yes, they do, actually. Yes, a lot of people do.
Undocumented immigrants, the reasons why they come to the U.S., having their kids being citizens is not on that list. The reasons why they come to this country
that's
not
factually
include
untrue.
Citizenship for their kids. But you know.
Oh really? Because if your child is hold on, wait a second. That's not true. So you're saying that nobody comes into this country to have their kids here in order to make sure their kids are citizens. Why don't you ask anybody who works in a hospital in, say, Brownsville, Texas, if that's true, and they'll laugh at you.
No, I didn't say everyone. There are a lot of people who abuse the 14th Amendment. There are a lot of people who come from Russia, from China, for example. There's a lot of tourism that's focused on having that. And
exactly.
You know, it would be disingenuous of me not to recognize that. But you're saying that undocumented immigrants come to this country to give their kids citizenship, and that's just not.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it happens a lot. But why would we go along with that? Why are the rest of us bullied? People like you get up and say, you're racist if you're not. Okay, spare me. Well, honestly, why is that good for us? Why would we allow that? Why are we going along with this? I guess is my question.
I'm not going to fall into the trap of calling everyone advocating for the end of birthright citizenship a ethno-nationalist or even a racist, although there's something to be said about that in many cases. But, you know, this is a complex issue. It's harder to defend birthright citizenship than it is to get behind those who call for the end of it. I would just say, you know, there's no perfect immigration system. We chose to give birthright citizenship in this country, and I would tell everyone at home to imagine what the U.S. would look like, what America would look like today without birthright citizenship. At some point, someone in our family was first to immigrate to this country, and their children became citizens through that right. You either have blood or
how about
birthright
this?
citizenship.
How about
and
this?
We chose that one.
But look, I'm not calling for an end to immigration, though I'm starting to think we should pause it because it's making our country too volatile. But a separate conversation. But let me ask you this. Why would we ever grant citizenship to the children of someone here illegally? You're breaking our laws, and we're rewarding you by giving what we consider this valuable thing, citizenship, to your offspring. Why would we do that? Couldn't we just say, if you're here illegally, the birthright citizenship does not apply to your offspring? Fair?
There are many arguments. First of all, I would argue that it helps with integration. When someone in the family becomes a U.S. citizen, it helps with integration for the whole family and the community. You know, that's something that people should to pay attention to. Also, the fact that many people argue that
that's a fair point. But let me ask you: a survey came out yesterday that showed that 22% of all U.S. households do not speak English at home. That's not integration. That's balkanization. That's the opposite of integration. So if it helps,
I don't know if
this immigration scheme. Well, integration.
The only element in terms of integration, Spanish has
the most important by far.
In places like New Mexico for centuries. It's not about just language. Integration
22%.
Is about much more than that.
Well, of course, no. Language is the key to culture. Anybody who pays 5 minutes of attention to this will tell you that a country in which people can't communicate by language is a disunited country. So do you think it's a good thing that 22% of Americans don't speak English at home? That's a bad thing, right?
Actually, it's an interesting statistic because most of those 22% are first-generation immigrants. When you have their children who are actually U.S. citizens because they were born here, the vast majority speaks English as their first language, and more, unfortunately, they're forgetting about Spanish. So, I think it's interesting to say that it's a tool for integration.
Why is that unfortunate? Wait, hold on. Why is that unfortunate? This is an English-speaking country. Why would it be unfortunate that people let go of a second language?
Many languages is something that we should somehow feel threatened about. I think it makes us, more aware of the world. No. Plus, Spanish has been spoken in this country.
Because language is culture, and you want a united culture, right?
Because, as you know, half of this country was part of Mexico before it became the U.S., right?
Half of this country was not part of Mexico, actually. That's factually untrue. But really quick, do you think that gives Mexico that's not half the country. As a geography major, I can tell you. But very quick, do you think the fact that some of this belonged to the colonial Mexico, really Spain, actually, but does that give Mexico some right to send its poor people here, do you think?
I don't think Mexico is sending anyone here. Actually, migration from Mexico is net zero. More people, more Mexicans are leaving the U.S. than those who are coming to this country. So, I think that's also an important statistic when we talk about immigration.
Again, untrue.
And just
untrue.
One quick thing, because I heard what Speaker Greenwich said at the beginning of the show. Oh, okay. Well, next time then.
Enrique, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Canada is dealing with its own immigration crisis, amazingly, and Prime Minister Trudeau has a plan: free hotels for immigrants. How do Canadian taxpayers who are not getting free hotels feel about that? We'll speak to one next.